Chapter 71. Token. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Exile took his time in leaving orders for Anya to keep an eye on the situation. He was concerned that one or two of the players may still try to poach people from Eraldsfen before making a run for it. I wonder how many other people will think of something similar. He wondered as his consciousness returned to the Raider's Horn. If we can move quickly on this, we can get out of Valheim and do some grinding before anyone can react. I bet even Kaleidoscope will have their hands full with this. Exile began to wonder how many teams had already registered themselves as Pantheons. It might be worthwhile seeking out other teams to ally ourselves with. There's bound to be some worried about the larger groups. A plan began to form in his mind as he thought about creating a group of allies to help each other survive. Now that the floodgates had been opened, they were bound to see a rise in PKers and teams who did not get an invitation to the closed beta. It would most likely only get worse once the first episodes for each channel were released. There's got to be some players waiting to see some information before jumping in. Exile sighed as this could not be helped. However, their team was relatively unknown. So it should only be Clay and the others' fans who watched their channel for a while. Unless his name appearing on the list attracted some attention. But most people would likely tune into the top 10 players. I wonder how often they'll update that list. Exile stared into space for a bit before shaking his head. There was no point in worrying about it too much for now. He had bigger fish to fry. He quickly activated his avatar spell again, but this time he descended into Clay's temple. Clay seemed to be having a tough time trying to deal with the unfolding situation. It seemed many of his followers were angry that he bowed to another god, which had them seriously considering switching to one of the ones who had appeared here. However, Exile's aura soon quenched those rebellious thoughts when he arrived. They could all sense that none of these new gods could hold a candle to such a power. Clay was relieved to see him, but Exile cut to the chase and delivered his ultimatum to the new players. Stay and die once their protection wore off. Or head to the next settlement and prove themselves worthy of joining Ragnarok. The result was pretty much the same as what happened in Eraldsfen. Once they sensed Exile's aura, they knew it was not a good idea to piss him off while they were as weak as they were. Clay was relieved that the situation was resolved so quickly and followed Exile on his tour around the other temples. Each time, he delivered his speech and ultimatum, which did not fail to give the results that they wanted. Before long, they had all gathered together again in the Raider's Horn, laughing their asses off. If you are not reading this at webnovel.com or the all-free webnovel app, then sorry, the content you are reading is stolen. All rights are reserved by All Free Web Novel. Don't take part in piracy. Don't earn money for thieves. Don't make me drop this novel. To support the actual author, go here. https://www.webnovel.com/book/pantheon.online_194003705104305. How did you even get that idea? I was ready for pulling my hair out. Clay chuckled as he glanced at Exile in admiration. I'm afraid I can't really take the credit for that one. One of the players I had to deal with demanded to join our team. Which led to the idea of this little competition. Exile smiled awkwardly as he glanced around the room. I guess the team is about to get a lot bigger. Leggy sighed as he became absent-minded. True, we can't afford to slack off unless they think of replacing us. Buri frowned as he glanced at the others with a stern expression. If you think about it, we really don't have too much of a lead on them. A grim atmosphere descended in the bar as Exile shook his head. That may be so, but think of the opportunities we've already seized. It's not like they're going to find amazing quests that'll give them a quick boost as we did. Most of them will have to grind without stopping just to catch up. It won't be that easy. The atmosphere in the bar lifted a bit when they thought about that. Still, they knew that they had to get stronger before any of the newcomers joined them. They still felt like they had to make whoever their new teammates would be, realize that they would always be above them. Now is as good a time as any. Sort through your offerings before we head out. Exile smiled as he navigated through his inventory. Some gold. A few useless things, but I guess I can sell them. All in all, he was unimpressed. It was clear that they would have to drastically increase their followers if they wanted to make enough gold to buy one of the buildings in Valheim. What's this? Exile focused on one of the strange tokens that were in his inventory. The item was a white coin when it appeared in the palm of his hand. One side held a human face while the other had a big X on it. There were a few others in his inventory, so he pulled them all out to see if they were any different. As he studied each coin one by one, he noticed that each one had a different face on it. When he really focused on the tokens, a system description popped up in his mind. Soul token, human. Can be used to purchase divine abilities or create your divine realm. Created from human sacrifices, Exile's expression froze as his eyes narrowed on the tokens in front of him. It had never occurred to him that there could be alternate forms of currency depending on what a player wanted to buy. The part that really caught his attention was the description of creating his own divine realm. His breathing became ragged as the others turned curious gazes on him. Chapter 72. Milestone complete. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What are those? Clay asked curiously as he stared at the tokens. They're some sort of currency. Exile sighed as he explained the item description to the group. Human sacrifices. Clay hummed in a low voice as a dark look crossed his face. That can't be good. If you did something like that in other games, you would definitely be considered evil. I'm not sure it's that simple. Exile stroked his beard as he glanced around. Good and evil is a matter of perspective. They made these sacrifices to me, but I didn't demand them. Which means the Skardians have a culture where sacrifices are acceptable. Logically speaking, that means they don't see sacrificing humans to the gods as an evil act. Exile continued, while the others frowned. I think we have to be prepared to accept the culture of our NPCs, no matter what it brings. If what you are saying is true. Then what are the fallen? Clay's frown deepened as he thought about what he had learned in the tomb. I was under the impression that they were possibly evil gods. Exile heaved a long sigh as he shook his head. I'm not sure. Personally, I thought the same. The bar became silent as Exile mused over his thoughts. With what we've seen so far, there seem to be both invaders and defenders of the tombs. The ones outside are trying to get in while the others are testing us to see if we deserve the legacies left behind. Exile hummed as he tried to put together the bigger picture. There should be a way to be considered as an evil god. Maybe going against your NPC's established beliefs. Exile felt the start of a slight headache coming on as he struggled to understand. However, he was now sure that the idea of good and evil was not so black and white in Pantheon Online. It's not something I can get a grasp on just by thinking about it. I'll need to wait for the situation to become more clear. Since it appeared to have no adverse effect on him for the time being, he did not intend to stop the sacrifices. He hoped that as long as he did not explicitly condone it openly, he could reap the rewards for the time being. I think we've wasted enough time. Forget about it for now. Let's face it, we still don't know much about the game yet. We can revisit this at a later time. For now, let's get out of here. Exile nodded at the others to show that they should prepare themselves. It only took a few minutes for the party to sort out their gains before they gathered by the door. Exile silently hoped that nothing else would crop up while they left Valheim. Luckily, the streets appeared just as empty as before. Surely not everyone is stuck trying to deal with the new players. Exile frowned as they quietly made their way through the streets. However, Valheim remained deathly silent. Even when they reached the gates and looked out onto the snow-covered hills, there was not a single player in sight. If anyone else has already solved their problem, then maybe they had the same idea. Exile figured that there had to be at least a couple of other active parties in the area. However, they were probably searching for new hunting grounds just like them. Let's see. Exile picked out a random direction that led away from the wolves. It would all be up to luck when they found something new anyway. However, as they traveled across the hills, they would randomly attract the attention of wolves who should be too far away for them to cause aggro. Wolf Slayer. 27 40ths, 32 40ths, 39 40ths, damn. Exile shouted in frustration as he glanced at his milestones. One short. Is that really what you should be thinking about? Clay gasped for air as he looked around. Why are they attacking us? We're definitely outside of their zones. Exile frowned as he turned his attention to the question. Maybe. Things have changed along with the open beta. The group fell silent at Exile's statement. It made a sort of sense, but there was no way to confirm it. After all, they had not interacted much with anything besides divine wolves and lost souls. Exile glanced at their concerned expressions before shaking his head. There's no point worrying about something you can't change. But maybe, we should take advantage of these wolves while we can. The team had not taken any damage due to their levels, but it was still tiring to time their attacks properly. Exile grinned as he spotted another pack rushing towards them. Looks like I didn't have to wait long. Exile licked his lips as he let out a roar. The others shook their heads as they split up to take care of a wolf each. After all, none of them wanted to miss out on free kills. Naturally, it was a bloodbath. The wolves seemed to be throwing themselves into the jaws of death for no reason. Not that Exile was complaining. Wolf Slayer. 40 of 40, awarding +1 stat point, Wolf Slayer. Completed, what the foo. Exile cursed as his good mood was shattered. With the Wolf Slayer milestone completed, that meant there was no way for him to farm levels from these mobs anymore. The only benefit they had now were the few drops that they could gain. I see, this is how they'll stop powerful players from farming low-level zones. Forcing us further away from safe zones in search of levels. Exile sighed as he remembered the players he had seen farming here before. Maybe it's not that they wanted to look elsewhere, but they had to. He suddenly had the distinct feeling that his team had actually fallen behind instead of being far in the lead. Exile sighed as he pulled up his stats. Name. Exile, Pantheon. Ragnarok, title. King of the Gods, Ragnarok, God of the Hearth, race. Local royal deity, human, tier. 0. Level. 5, HP, 105/105, 90+15, DP. 16/16, 8+8, Strength. 10, Endurance. 21, 18+3, Speed. 14, 13+1, Authority. 16, 8+8, Now. What should I put you in so I can reach level 6? A glint appeared in Exile's eyes as he tried to make up his mind. Chapter 73. Too soon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Exile grinned as he looked at his stats. To him, it was an obvious choice. Let's go with Authority, it's now my lowest stat when looking at the base values. He hummed as he increased its value. Congratulations. 50 points of Divinity have been detected. You have reached level 6. Authority increase detected. Please select one of the following divine spells. Divine, Minor Force. Creates a shock wave with the user as the center knocks back nearby enemies. Cost. 2 DP, O.org, Divine, Minor Divine Arrow. Fast-moving Golden Arrow. Damage and cost equal to user's authority up to 10 maximum. Hearth, Soothing Hearth. Creates a fiery aura that suppresses enemy stats by 20% in a 20-meter radius. Lasts for 1 minute. Cost. 3DP, Exile's eyes immediately narrowed in on the new Hearth spell. Its effects and time frame were basically an upgraded version of part of Raging Hearth's effects. Except Raging Hearth came with a healing factor and only a 10-meter radius. It seems having multiple effects in a spell drastically decreases how long they last for and increases cost. Raging Hearth should be something meant to be used to turn the tides in a group fight. Whereas Soothing Hearth is for all situations. Naturally, Exile chose Soothing Hearth to add to his expanding arsenal. Minor Divine Arrow never entered his consideration, and Minor Force seemed to be a situational spell without much use as of right now. Of course, it would be worth considering later when he was more likely to find himself swarmed by players and more powerful mobs. It doesn't look like any more are coming our way. Clay sighed as he looked around at a few packs lazing around in the snow. Have any of you killed 40 wolves yet? Exile raised an eyebrow as he looked at the team. However, everyone shook their heads to show that they had not. It'd be better if they get this milestone over with as soon as possible. Now that he knew the milestones had an end, it was better to squeeze every benefit that they could from it while they had the area to themselves. Okay, guys. Go kill some wolves until you reach 40 of them. We'll move on once you've done that. Exile nodded his head with a stern expression, causing the others to glance at him curiously. However, nobody complained. They were all up for gaining some easy kills while they could. As Exile stood to the side and studied their moves, a strange notification appeared. If you are not reading this at webnovel.com or the all-free webnovel app, then sorry, the content you are reading is stolen. All rights are reserved by all-free webnovel. Don't take part in piracy. Don't earn money for thieves. Don't make me drop this novel. To support the actual author, go here. https://www.webnovel.com/book/pantheon.online_19740037705104305.antihero, huh. Must be a glitch. Exile frowned as he turned his attention back to his team. He wanted to gain a deeper understanding of how the others fought so that he could come up with some strategies. For example, he noticed that Leggy was better at blocking than anyone else, yet Clay always led the charge. It would be better to have Leggy block and Clay take advantage of the openings he creates. That way, Clay won't lose as much health. Exile stroked his chin as he continued to analyze the group. This was the perfect time to do so, since the wolves were incapable of harming them anyway. The team had to go through several packs before they finally completed their own milestones. Clay had become excited, as he was only a single stat point away from level 5 now. The rest had cleared the halfway mark. Exile nodded his head as they all gathered again. It was time to move on and see what else this world had to offer them. Their group moved off through the snow, taking a roundabout path to circle around Valheim's walls to see what was on the other side. It took them a couple of hours, for that was just how large Valheim was. But once they had reached the halfway point, they felt an icy wind blow against them. When they reached the far side, they were cursing due to the cold. This weather would be harder to deal with for anyone who isn't a Skardian god. I wonder if this is a warning that further out this way is too high level for us. A glint appeared in Exile's eyes as snow lingered in his hair and beard. Being the first to explore in this direction could possibly bring them some rich rewards. Exile waved his hand to show that they would continue onwards. It was too cold to say anything, so the group had to make do with hand signals. Before long, they found their pace slowing to a crawl. The snowdrift reached their thighs as they struggled against it. What the heck is this all about? It's really starting to feel like the game doesn't want us to go this way. The wind started to pick up all around them, creating a snowstorm that was almost blinding. Exile. I don't think we should go this way. Clay shouted from somewhere in the snow behind Exile. Exile glanced over his shoulder at his team before turning his attention forward again. I'm sure I saw something just now between the snow. The team had paused as they waited for Exile to make a decision. But his eyes were glued to a single point ahead of them. Then, it happened. A gap in the storm revealed a heavily buried marble pillar protruding from the snow. I knew it. Guys. There's something up ahead. Let's check it out before we turn back and try a different direction. Exile roared above the howling winds. The others began to complain loudly. In this storm and with how fast they were moving, how long would it take them to reach whatever Exile had seen? Not only that, but they would have to suffer through the storm again to return. A few of them felt that the risk was not worth it. However, Exile had not led them astray so far. Please read the author's thoughts. Chapter 74. Buried in the Snow. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Asterisk. Just before we start, I'd just like to say thanks for your support, guys. Please read the author's thoughts as it's quite important. Asterisk. Exile shivered as he stared at the almost completely submerged marble column in the snow. The top of it had clearly broken off, but this was only the first of several. They laid out a path through the snow, but where they led to, Exile could not see. Exile. I have a bad feeling about this. Clay rubbed his arms to warm up as his eyes shifted to their surroundings. It doesn't feel like we should even be out here at our level. You're right. I don't think we are. Exile's eyes narrowed on the trail of columns. But that just means there's a good chance this is an opportunity for us. The others cast dubious gazes over the ruins as they tried to gauge if Exile was right. However, none of them could see what made him think that there was anything to gain from being here. To them, it looked more like a random ruin to add some flavor to the game, so they could not help but raise their eyebrows at him. Trust me. Exile coughed as he glanced around at the team. There's bound to be something interesting. The developers put something in every area of Mayhem when they developed it. There were no locations that were solely for decoration. I guess these guys are unaware of that. Exile hummed as he led the group through the snow. At times, they would lose sight of the columns. But when they continued onwards, new ones would appear. See. There's nothing here. Bori complained as they reached the end of the path. Exile glanced around with a frown. Don't tell me they expect us to excavate the ruins. He could not help but sigh when he considered this possibility. It would be a mammoth task. One that they could not complete in a short time with their current numbers. Maybe I should just take a note of it and come back at a later time. It felt like he had wasted their time, but he was still certain that there had to be something worth finding in the area. Where should we go for now, then? It'll take some time to head back in the other direction. Just as he thought that, Buri prepared himself to make another complaint. But he was suddenly interrupted. If you are not reading this at webnovel.com or the all-free webnovel app, then sorry, the content you are reading is stolen. All rights are reserved by all-free webnovel. Don't take part in piracy. Don't earn money for thieves. Don't make me drop this novel. To support the actual author, go here. https://www.webnovel.com/book/pantheon.online_19740037705104305. The group screamed as they plunged downwards. The carpet of snow beneath their feet gave way as the unseen ice supporting it broke. The group was thrown downwards into a dark chasm. The columns around them rushed past as they fell. Damn! How far does this go? Clay yelled above the rushing wind in his ears as he tried to peer into the darkness. The sound of waterfalls soon entered their ears. Just as Exile was about to warn the others to brace themselves, they were plunged into ice-cold waters. Exile choked as he felt the frigid water rush down his throat. An oxygen bar appeared in his mind and it was depleting at a fast rate. He immediately gained his bearings and swam upwards. Luckily, he had not been thrown too far underwater and broke the surface within moments. "Is everyone all right?" Exile yelled as he glanced around at where they had arrived. A chorus of yells replied as one by one, the group surfaced. "Damn, where are we?" Exile's eyes could not see much. This place was unlike the tombs which had lit up when they arrived. There was nothing but long, sharp, icy rock walls that disappeared into the darkness and the marble columns. "Yo! I think I've found a bridge." Leggy's voice came from somewhere off to Exile's right. The group swam towards where his voice had come from, but because of the darkness, they could not see more than a few feet in front of themselves. Eventually, Exile's hand landed on a smooth piece of stone. Leggy came into view as he helped Exile haul himself out of the water. "Pretty stupid, right?" Leggy grinned as Exile sat on the firm ground, creating a puddle around himself. "What is?" Exile grumbled as he peered past Leggy to spot the others. "Drowning. I mean, that gods can drown." Leggy started laughing, but Exile was in no mood to laugh about their situation right now. "It's definitely not a natural bridge." Exile's eyes scanned the smooth surface and realized that Leggy had been right. What he was sitting on was indeed a bridge that stretched into the darkness on either side. However, there was something about it that was throwing him off. The columns. His eyes swiftly moved to the hole that had been created ere they fell through the snow far above them. Sunlight streamed in past the snowstorm outside to highlight the upper halves of several columns. The marble columns and this stone bridge don't match. The more he looked at it, the more he felt like the marble columns had been added at a much later date. Their style was consistent with Valheim's architecture, but the stone bridge was made of a different material with no embellishments. This one subtle detail piqued Exile's curiosity. "What did we stumble into?" "Hey, Exile! What way should we go?" Clay shouted as he strode over while peering into the darkness. "I don't want to stick around here. It's giving me the creeps, BDNV, I know what you mean." "Well, at least we only have two options. That way leads towards Valheim. But the other leads deeper into the snowstorm." Exile hummed as the rest of the group gathered around him. "That doesn't really answer my question." Clay hummed as a frown appeared on his face. "Well, we're in uncharted territory. We don't know if there are mobs down here. Or what they are capable of if there are any. On top of that, I'm fairly certain that any loot to be found will be in the opposite direction of Valheim. Do you think it will be worth taking the risk?" Old Un asked as he glanced towards the end of the bridge that led away from Valheim. The rewards should be good. Whether we can survive is another question. For all we know, it might also be the only path out of here." Exile glanced at each of them in turn. "Let's take a vote on it." There were a few grumbles as they discussed the possible pros and cons of each choice before they took the vote. In the end, the majority agreed to take the risk of heading away from Valheim. Their footsteps sounded oppressive as they echoed around the chasm that surrounded them. Old Un kept his eyes focused on the dark waters on either side of the bridge. This was just in case there was a threat hidden in them that had yet to reveal itself. Time passed slowly for the group as they wandered further and further away from the sunlight that was now far behind them. Their visibility reduced a little bit more, but it would be enough to react to any sudden movement close by. Exile quickly calculated how long they had been walking for, only to realize that it had been a few hours at least. As more time passed, he began to doubt whether they had made the right choice. However, Buri, who had been walking ahead of them, came back with some news. "It looks like we've found the end of the bridge." Buri spoke softly, as if the surrounding darkness had ears. "What's the details?" Exile asked as he raised an eyebrow. "The rock on either side of us comes together to form a wall up ahead. But there's a tunnel through it. It looks like someone has fashioned it into a doorway. It's made of the same smooth rock we're standing on. But it seems to have some kind of design. It's got different layers of smooth squared rock as an outline. Exile hummed as he heard this. Something was definitely living down here then. But what? Or is it an old structure that's been buried with time? A fortress or something of the old gods? His mind raced as it became more and more likely that they would find some good stuff down here. Or at the very least a sort of secret passage between two areas. Let's go, and everyone keep your eyes and ears sharp. If there are any mobs, they're bound to be beyond that point. Exile commanded solemnly as he felt his body tremble. Let's see what you're hiding. Asterisk, how do you feel about this chapter length? I'm debating making this the new normal after I finish getting the Priv chaps out and the mass release is done. Asterisk. Chapter 75. Den you are listening at novelfull.audio. As they passed the gateway, they could not help but eye the area warily. It felt like they were inside of a building now rather than underground. The walls were smooth, with some architectural flair that involved a lot of straight lines and sharp edges. Unlike the pleasing curved patterns that were embedded in the marble columns that they had been following. A chill breeze flowed through the passage, causing Exile to narrow his eyes in the darkness. If there's a breeze, then there should be an exit. The group continued on in silence. They were worried that their voices would carry in this strange place and alert anything dangerous to their presence. Exile's eyes narrowed as he held up a hand. Stop. The group paused as they eyed him with curiosity. The only sound they could hear in the passage was their own footsteps. They could not see too far, but they were fairly certain that there was nothing there. What's up, Exile? Clay asked in a hushed voice as he stared in the direction that Exile was looking in. There. Can't you see it? Exile hissed as he refused to turn his head away from what had caught his eye. No. What are you? Oh. Clay hissed as he finally realized what was wrong. He drew his weapon slowly and gestured to the others to do the same. Is it alone? I don't know. But this confirms there are mobs down here. Damn. I can't even tell what it is. Exile watched the darkness for it to return. He had seen a sudden glint of light. 3 in fact. However, he realized that this was wrong. There were no light sources down here. So something that was moving was creating these glints of light. But when he thought about it, he thought it looked like they could be eyes that were mildly interested in them. Either way, there was definitely something down there with them, and it was on the move. If you are not reading this at webnovel.com or the all-free webnovel app, then sorry, the content you are reading is stolen. All rights are reserved by All Free Web Novel. Don't take part in piracy. Don't earn money for thieves. Don't make me drop this novel. To support the actual author, go here. https://www.webnovel.com/book/pantheon.online_194037705104305. Antihero. They waited with bated breath. Their muscles were tense as they prepared for a sudden assault. However, nothing happened. Even after roughly 10 minutes went by. Something isn't right. Why didn't it attack us? Exile frowned as he pondered the reasoning behind the strange behavior. After all, the whole point of mobs was to make the game world difficult to explore. Was it possible that this one was friendly? Doubt it. Exile scoffed at his own thought as he edged closer towards where he had seen the glints of light. However, he only discovered a smooth piece of wall that looked like a sort of doorframe. The space on the other side of it would have been large enough to hide the body of a person as they peered around it. Was it just a scout then? Exile clicked his tongue as he wondered how long it would take whatever it was to find others of its kind. Things are starting to look dicey. The others were on edge as Exile called them over, but were soon relieved to see that nothing was there anymore. Don't get the wrong impression. If anything, this makes our situation worse. Whatever it was knows its way around down here and there's likely more of them. Just be ready for anything. Exile wore a solemn expression as he led his team through the doorway and further down the tunnel. Before long, they saw the tunnel was getting wider, which made them feel wary. It could give any enemies enough room to surround their small group or approach them unseen. Exile cursed under his breath as a luminous glow came from somewhere up ahead. He urged the others to keep as quiet as possible as they moved towards the light. However, the source had been hidden by a sharp, squared corner. It was only when they looked around it that they gasped. Their breath had been taken away by what they saw. It's a city. Leggy almost squealed with excitement. As the others were looking around at the marvelous ruins where giant gems were used as street lights due to the glow they gave off, Exile fixated on a statue. It was humanoid in shape, except its proportions seemed off for its size. The carved statue wore resplendent armor adorned with real gems. It waved a giant hammer overhead with a single hand while the other held a giant tower shield that could cover its entire body. What caught Exile's attention most of all was the carved beard. It did not take him long to place what the statue was depicting. This is a dwarven ruin. What? Clay asked in shock as he turned towards Exile. How can this be a dwarven ruin? Isn't this area supposed to belong to human deities? There's no mistake. Look at that statue. Doesn't the length of its legs and arms seem off? It's definitely supposed to be a dwarf. The question is, why is something like this so close to Valheim? Exile hummed as he glanced at the rest of the city from their vantage point. That at least explains the difference in architecture, but the patterns on the pillars didn't match Valheim's style either. Exiles looked over the city once more but could find no traces of the other architectural style. There's definitely another race involved with this place. On the surface at least, and the bridge. Would we have found another city if we went the other way? Just as he was considering who the other race may be, he spotted shadows moving through the city below. Looks like they are finally ready to play. Let's see what you are. Chapter 76. Lost Travelers, you are listening at novelfull.audio. 0.7 HP, Exile cursed as he swung his shield to block the next blow. The creatures were fast, but they were not anything that he had been expecting. Where the hell are these things even from? They were certainly not dwarves, and they did not look capable of the intricate architecture he had seen on the columns. Which meant that these things were the cause for this place being abandoned. Or they had moved in when the original inhabitants had left. Every time he almost caught a glimpse of them, they seemed to elude his eyesight. It was as if he were incapable of registering their true form. Exile lashed out with his axe and a high-pitched scream followed the wild attack. Divine Power Damage Check. Enemy Authority 8. Your Authority 17. Your Divine Power is superior. You have dealt 0.9 HP to Deep Stalker, Infant. Exile's eyes went wide when he received the damage report. Now he knew what his enemy was called, and he had confirmed that they could hurt it. However, that infant part worried him. That suggested there was something stronger than these down here. Their authority score is low. Strength seems to be their strong point. Exile shouted over the din of battle as the group moved through the ruins. If you are not reading this at webnovel.com or the all-free webnovel app, then sorry, the content you are reading is stolen. All rights are reserved by all-free webnovel. Don't take part in piracy. Don't earn money for thieves. Don't make me drop this novel. To support the actual author, go here. https://www.webnovel.com/book/pantheon.online_19740037705104305. A number of complaints rang out from the group as they heard that. Only Exile among them had put such a large amount of points into that stat. Clay grit his teeth as he made a decision. An intricately decorated bone horn appeared in his hand. This was his quest reward for successfully raiding the tomb. Everyone! Get ready! Clay shouted as he placed the thin end to his lips. In the next moment, a loud blaring noise rang out from the instrument. It was a deep sound that seemed to call them to battle. A golden halo spread out with the sound wave, and as it washed over Exile, he received a notification. You have been targeted by the Raider's horn. Judgment in progress. Judgment result. Ally +5 authority for 20 minutes. Exile's eyes went wide at such a powerful buff. It directly rose his authority to 20.2 points. A mad grin spread across his face before he realized that something else had changed. I can see them. Exile chuckled as he stared at the horrible creatures. They were slightly shorter than an average person with smoky gray skin. They wrapped filthy cloth around their waists and upper legs, while all 6 of their humanoid arms ended in long, sharp nails. Their heads and bodies were completely hairless, but their ears came to a point. It was not as pronounced as what you would expect from the likes of elves, but it was definitely there. Each one of these creatures had 3 eyes that were set in a triangular formation. 2 where you would expect human eyes to be and 1 on the forehead. These eyes were all cloudy, as if they were blind. But Exile was sure that they were not. There were no lips to be seen on their faces. It was just a singular, cracked line. However, when they opened their mouth, he could see 8 sharp fangs nesting inside. BDNVL.M Exile cursed when he saw why these creatures had 6 arms as he noticed several of them using them to scale the ruined walls. Apart from this change, Exile also noticed that he could see a bit further into the darkness. So some details had become much clearer to him. I see, there are creatures where your authority will have to be high enough to even detect them. It's like authority allows you to connect with the game world on a deeper level. Exile hummed as he mulled over this revelation. It was a strategic piece of information, and they had been lucky enough to discover it so soon. Well, it at least confirms that we're too low level for this place. We need to abandon this place. Exile sighed as he thought about the treasure that could be hidden within. He started to keep an eye on the others, barking out warnings whenever one of the creatures was about to strike. This allowed them to defend themselves better as they slowly backed off, searching for a way out of the situation. It was clear that the others wanted to know how he knew where the enemies were, but this was not the time to divulge this information. Surviving came first. You have dealt 0.19 HP, Exile cocked an eyebrow as he drew his axe back after chopping one of the deep stalkers. Oh. That horn doesn't just buff us. It debuffs the enemy by the same amount. Exile's eyes flashed with excitement as he thought about what a rare item it was. It was a good thing that it belonged in the hands of someone in their Pantheon. It'll be a big help in group battles, but for now I need to focus on finding a way out. Exile grimaced as he thought about what would happen once the effects of the horn wore off. There has to be a way out. Of course, he was now kicking himself for leading the group down into the ruins instead of running when they spotted the mobs. They had been overconfident in their abilities and had not expected to run into trouble like this. However, that route was now cut off. So they were stuck fighting a protracted battle as they explored the ruins at the same time. Exile. Something's telling me we should go that way. Old Un shouted as he pointed in the direction that held the dwarven statue. Exile was about to question him about it when remembered something. God of Lost Travelers. Chapter 77. Guarding the path. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lead the way. Everyone, follow him. I'll guard the rear. Exile roared as he rushed to intercept a deep stalker that was targeting Old Un. The others did not hesitate and immediately chased after Old Un, who had run off. They were not going to argue with Exile, since he was the one who had the best chance of holding off the mobs anyway. The only thing that they could do was not get too far ahead of him. 0.7 HP, 0.7 HP, damn. There's too many of them. Exile groaned as he looked around. Even though he could see them, they were beginning to coordinate with each other to try to overwhelm him. He spared a glance towards his comrades and decided it was time to make a run for it, even as he ducked under the outstretched hand of one of the mobs. 0.7 HP, 0.7 HP, 0.7 HP, they surrounded him again pretty quickly and cut off his retreat. What annoyed him the most was that he could never hit the same one more than a couple of times. These creatures seemed to be quite intelligent. Whenever he injured them enough, they fell back to the rear of the crowd, preventing him from gaining a kill. If we even want to properly explore this place, we'll need to have enough power to overwhelm them quickly. Exile grimaced as sharp nails scraped across his cheek, leaving bloody marks behind. He quickly tucked himself down and rolled away from the next blow, saving himself from sustaining more damage. 0.7 HP, if you are not reading this at webnovel.com or the all-free webnovel app, then sorry, the content you are reading is stolen. All rights are reserved by All Free Web Novel. Don't take part in piracy. Don't earn money for thieves. Don't make me drop this novel. To support the actual author, go here. https://www.webnovel.com/book/pantheon.online_19740037705104305. Exile briefly checked his health pool to discover that he was dangerously close to the half-health mark. 56/105. It's not looking too good. The brief respite from their attacks allowed him to identify a slight gap in their encirclement. With a grim expression, he raised his shield and rammed his way through. An angry screech came from the mobs he left behind, as they began to scurry along the broken walls like spiders chasing their prey. That's just creepy. Exile pulled an ugly expression when he saw how quickly they were moving. They'll catch up again soon. Damn, I didn't want to do this so soon. Exile slid to a halt as he spun to face the enemies. He raised his axe to point at the tide of mobs closing in on him. The edge of his axe began to glow red hot as he activated his spell. Cleansing Flame. A wave of fire burst forth from his axe as he heard the deep stalkers screech in fear and pain. It was the most potent offensive that he could muster. Its only drawback was the cost. You have dealt 0.19 HP, that notification appeared a number of times in his mind over the next 7 seconds before he cut the spell off. He did not even wait to see what damage he had wrought on his opponents. His mind was fully focused on catching up to the others. Notifications continued to appear, but he paid them no mind. You have killed Deep Stalker, Infant, new milestone. Deep Stalker. 8 out of 100, this was the only notification that actually caught his eye, causing him to click his tongue in annoyance. I thought I'd take out more than that. The ones who fell to his spell must have been the ones who had already been injured. He took solace in the fact that he must have heavily injured a large number of them. With their careful nature, it was likely that they would fall back and wait for fresh mobs to lead the charge. Hurry up. Clay's voice came from up ahead. Exile squinted as he realized they had come to a stop right in front of the dwarven statue. When he had almost reached them, Old Un placed a hand behind the bottom of the tower's shield and a loud click followed. The smooth ground in front of the statue started to separate, revealing a staircase that led deeper underground. Exile groaned when he saw this. We need to go up. Not deeper into the depths of this place. One by one, the group disappeared down into the hole. Exile sighed as he quickly followed. He could hear the sounds of the deep stalkers swiftly chasing after him. Guess I didn't give them enough of a scare. As soon as he disappeared down the staircase, the ground rumbled to a close behind him, sealing them off from their pursuers. Exile heaved in a deep breath, as he could finally rest a bit. The ordeal had made him tense without realizing it. Where to? Now. Old Un frowned as he stared downwards. It was the only path that they could take, anyway. However, He wondered why he had been directed this way when he thought about seriously getting out of this place and back to Valheim. The group wore exhausted expressions as they picked themselves up off the stairs and began the journey. Old Un took the lead in case his abilities revealed something. However, the stairway just kept going and going. Deeper and deeper. Ever onwards, as if they were descending into the very depths of the divine realms themselves. They easily spent more than a day following this path. It never diverged. Not a single turn. No split passageways. Just as they were considering returning the way they had come, they heard the sound of stone sliding against stone. Maybe I could see what it is if Clay uses that horn again. Exile sighed as he remembered the feeling of having that extra power. Unfortunately, it had worn off long ago by this point and it would just be a waste to use it again now. Chapter 78. Treasure of the Deep. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When the group finally reached the end of the staircase, they found a wide open room. There were statues that were identical to the one that guarded the entrance to the stairs dotted along the walls. All of them were staring at what stood in the center. What is that? Clay asked as he looked at the strange sphere that was held above a gaping hole in the ground. No idea. Exile hummed as he moved towards it. However, after a few steps, a piece of the metal that made up the sphere parted, showing that there were a dozen seats inside. This caused Exile to frown as he glanced around the room for what could have triggered the change. However, nothing caught his eye. If you are not reading this at webnovel.com or the all-free webnovel app, then sorry, the content you are reading is stolen. All rights are reserved by all-free webnovel. Don't take part in piracy. Don't earn money for thieves. Don't make me drop this novel. To support the actual author, go here. https://www.webnovel.com/book/pantheon.online_19740037705104305. Seeing that nothing else seemed to be reacting to their presence, he took the opportunity to move closer to inspect it better. It seems to be two different spheres. One on the outside while the interior one has room for people to sit inside. Is it some kind of transportation? Exile glanced into the abyss of the hole that was beneath the sphere. It could probably gain a lot of speed if it was dropped down this. But where would it lead to? He was feeling troubled that this could potentially be what old UN's power pointed to be their way out. They had no idea where it would take them. With their current HP and DP, there was no way that they could survive a long journey across the wilds either. There are a lot of questions about these ruins. But I don't think we're capable of unearthing its secrets quite yet. Exile let out a sigh. At least they knew what to expect if they were to return here. It's not all bad. We learned about an important mechanism of the game and we can be certain there is treasure to be found down here. We'll come back once we're strong enough. Okay, everyone. Let's get in. Looks like this is our ticket out of here and we don't have any other options. Exile sighed as he shook his head. You're kidding, right? I'm not good with roller coasters, never mind whatever that is. Leggy yelped as he realized that Exile was serious. No, unless you want to go back up there and definitely lose some stats fighting those mobs. You know there's no way we'll be able to recover any of our orbs with them around. It's a miracle we even made it here without suffering a loss. Exile shrugged his shoulders as he stared at Leggy. It's time to cut our losses and get out. Who agrees? There was no discussion as everyone but Leggy nodded in agreement. He flashed a look at the others that basically accused them of being traitors, but he did not want to be left behind. It was with a reluctant expression that he allowed the others to help him climb inside the sphere. As soon as everyone had sat down, they looked at each other with awkward expressions. Does anyone know how to use this thing? Buri chuckled at the awkward air between them. Exile flashed a look at Old Un. After all, he was the one who led them to the device. So if anyone would have an idea, it would most likely be him. Old Un sighed as everyone turned to look at him. He activated one of his spells, and a frown crossed his face. I'm just getting a vague feeling that it should be working already. Old Un's frown deepened as he struggled to understand what was wrong. Great. It's a dud. Looks like we'll just have. Leggy's delight was cut off as he yelped. The metals suddenly slid back into place and sealed them inside. You have been granted the quest. Autosphere, quest. Autosphere, description. The Autosphere is a marvel left behind by the Dwarven gods during the war with the Fallen. Discover its secrets and bring the entire network back online. Current progress. 2 out of 100, rewards. Unknown, Exile frowned when he read through the quest description. We have to find 100 different locations. This is clearly something that can't be done in a short time. Exile sighed, but became elated a moment later. Wait. This means we have a monopoly over a fast travel system. If we can keep this hidden. Exile laughed out loud when he realized how useful this network would be. It would allow a Pantheon to quickly reinforce its territories if there was an Autosphere station nearby. We have to keep this secret, no matter what. This is the real treasure down here. Moments later, a map appeared like a kind of hologram in the space between their chairs. There were 2 dots on the map. One white and one green. When Exile studied it, he realized the green dot should be somewhere in Valheim, while the white one must be the current location. It's a shame it does not have red dots or something to indicate where the other locations are. But why is there an active one in Valheim? A sickening thought crossed his mind at that moment. Has someone else found an Autosphere in the city? But they couldn't use it because no other location had been found yet. A deep frown crossed his face as he wondered if this was a sort of social quest that was completed by the player base as a whole. That'll make it harder to keep this place on lockdown. We'll have to find a way to guard this location. Maybe charge people for using this station or something. I'm sure the other Pantheons who find one will have the same idea, envy that it made sense since it had the potential to be a massive moneymaker in the game. However, before he could discuss his thoughts with the others, Clay reached out and tapped on the green dot. A girlish squeal filled the sphere as everyone felt that they had suddenly been dropped down the hole. However, there was only one person that everyone was looking at. Leggy. He was the source of the squeal and his face turned bright red under their gazes. Chapter 79. Failed Raids. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Herrick Geraldson. What is the meaning of this? King Balmir demanded as he stared at his vassal. I can't, your majesty. The raids were going as planned. The Sand Eaters ran at the first sign of our ships as always. Herrick frowned as he shook his long, dark hair from his face, making the scars of many battles visible. However, recently they finally grew a spine. They started intercepting our warriors and met us in battle. That's not what I'm talking about. How have you lost so many men? King Balmir roared in displeasure as he slammed his mug made from bone on the arm of his crude wooden throne. Herrick's frown deepened as he glanced around at the others in the tent. They were all captains or jarls in the king's army that had been gathered for the raids this season. However, all of them wore grim expressions. Herrick was aware that many of them had encountered the same problems as he had. They fought with greater passion than we thought they were capable of, Herrick replied, while he replayed the memories of the recent battles in his mind. It was like they were possessed. Silence descended in the tent at Herrick's poor explanation. However, he was reluctant to go into detail about the things he had seen. Seasoned men had fallen on their own weapons. His own sword had suddenly swerved, failing to take the life of an enemy commander. The fish in the rivers avoided their nets, making supplies run low. These were all ill omens for the outcome of these raids. They had barely gained anything when the problems started coming, damaging the morale of the army. At this rate, they would be returning home empty-handed. Herrick frowned when he thought about his daughter, Anya, back home. She was due to be wed on his return. With his position in the village, he would be expected to hand over quite a large bounty to her husband. He grit his teeth when he thought about how this failure would affect his family. Many men and women from Eraldsfen had come on this raid. However, barely half of them remained. It would severely affect his image when he returned. Can anyone give me an explanation? King Balmir growled through gritted teeth, making many of those gathered feel nervous. Gods! Someone blurted out from the side and immediately regretted it. There are no gods. King Balmir roared as he threw his mug at her. There was a dull thud as it slammed into her forehead and left a cut behind. They must be using some kind of trick. Or magic. Someone else suddenly said in a low voice, causing the king to stare at him. Or magic. King Balmir said in a low voice as he leaned back in his throne with a frown. He was more willing to believe that it was magic than gods. After all, that was something they had seen before. The natives must be using magic to unnerve us. They've never used it before, so we weren't prepared. But their tricks won't work anymore. We just have to find the witches and sorcerers responsible. There was a sigh of relief in the tent as the captains and jarls released their collectively held breath. They felt much more at ease with this explanation. After all, a magic user was made of flesh and bone. But a god. What could they do to fight against such an existence? Amongst the gathering, only Herrick and two others had frowns remaining on their faces. They had fought witches and other things on other raids. But this did not seem to fit the bill to them. These things were happening in the heat of combat. There were none of the usual signs of a spellcaster. Like a single person being heavily guarded away from the battlefield. Besides, they kept mumbling about their gods as we killed them. Herrick was already concerned when he first heard one of his enemies mention the gods. No man or woman would idly invoke that term. Even if there was a powerful spellcaster, they would never claim them to be a god. Get some rest. Tomorrow. We launch one last raid. We'll strike the city at the heart of the river before returning home. We need the proper people to launch further raids now. King Balmir commanded as he sighed. The thought of how much gold he would have to pay to the few spellcasters willing to join raids made his heart sink. As they filed out of the tent, Herrick watched the others walk away in a jovial mood. Obviously planning to share the king's thoughts with their men and throw some celebrations. It's not a bad idea. They need to lift their spirits before tomorrow. Herrick sighed as he wondered how many lives they would lose this time. He could not shake the doubt that had settled in his heart. Have the gods returned? Are they punishing us for invading these lands? Why do these sand-eaters get to have gods on their side? Where are our gods? Herrick felt anger burning in his heart as he stomped through the camp to join his own people. There was silence amongst his people when he explained the king's plans. Unlike the other groups, Herrick's people were of the same mind as him and did not believe it was something as simple as magic users. The tension was suddenly cut by one of the women. Maybe we should pray to the gods. We're probably going to die tomorrow, anyway. What harm can it do? Herrick frowned at her before everyone burst out into laughter. Sure, they were considering the idea that gods may be involved. But praying. That would mean accepting that it was definitely true. If you are not reading this at webnovel.com or the all-free webnovel app, then sorry, the content you are reading is stolen. All rights are reserved by all-free webnovel. Don't take part in piracy. Don't earn money for thieves. I, as the author, do not benefit in any way from the actions of these thieves. To support me, the actual author, go here. https://www.webnovel.com/book/pantheon.online_19740037705104305.antihero. Chapter 80. Crowded. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The autosphere took many twists and turns as it plummeted into the depths of the earth before suddenly taking a sharp turn upwards. Exile and the others could not help but laugh as if they were on some kind of extreme roller coaster. Only Leggy had a pale complexion and complained the entire ride. This went on for roughly 20 minutes before they felt the sphere's momentum slowing down. The group's excited expressions turned solemn, as they did not know what to expect once the sphere opened up. Eventually, the sphere came to a sudden halt, and the atmosphere among them became tense as the metal slid open. "It's empty," Exile hummed as he glanced around the room outside of the sphere. The group wore confused expressions as they looked around for any signs as to who had activated Valheim Station. "There really is nobody," Exile thought as he leapt out of the sphere, followed by the others. They had been expecting a battle to take place as soon as they arrived. So this turned out to be a pleasant surprise. Unfortunately, there were no windows for Exile to discover their exact location in the city. Only a hallway that led to a staircase that rose upwards. "Maybe we're still below ground," Exile hummed as he waved at the others to follow him. The ascension up the stairs did not take long. Although the style was similar to the dwarven ruins, about halfway up it changed to match Valheim's architectural style. The group ended up with a lot of questions about the autosphere network. They had confirmed it was built by the dwarves for the war. But did that mean the dwarves originally owned this territory? Or was it a collaborative project between various races? At the very least there have to be a number of stations in the dwarven territories. Exile hummed as they reached the entrance to the station. He cocked an eyebrow when he looked at the wooden door in front of him. Hopefully, we're not somewhere with a lot of people around. He was nervous that just by exiting the building that they would give a huge secret away. He took a deep breath and narrowed his eyes as he slowly opened the door enough to peek outside. Damn! Exile's eyes went wide at what he saw. "Guys, we're close to the circle we arrived in when we ascended." Exile groaned as the others hissed. "It gets worse. There are an awful lot of players out there." "Let me see." Clay moved forward to have a look, unwilling to believe that they were so unlucky. "Why are there so many of them?" Clay felt despair when he looked outside. Exile had not lied. Valheim was busier than they had ever seen it. Exile stroked his chin for a moment as he considered the possible reasons. It's either people who failed to ascend before it became the open beta. Or a lot of new players managed to grow rapidly. How long were we down there, anyway? Exile frowned as he thought about it. He wondered if he had actually lost track of time while they were in the depths. When he thought about how long it had taken them to travel into the snowstorm, follow the columns, and find the autosphere. He guessed it could be possible for those with a lucky start to have already made it here. Or they killed other players to advance quickly. An ugly expression crossed his face when he realized a lot of their early progress was negated because of this mechanic. When he told the others his thoughts, they too let out a low groan. There were so few players when they started that they could not take advantage of that mechanic, so it had taken them far longer to level up. However, a sudden influx of all new players was a perfect chance to abuse it. They all had one thought on the matter. Lucky. Is this the developer's way of balancing the scales? Exile frowned as he considered that possibility. A heavy sigh escaped his mouth as he continued to watch the flow of traffic outside. It's best if we leave one by one and try to blend into the crowd so nobody notices. Exile stated as he turned to the others. Wait for the right moment and slip out behind a group that passes by. We'll meet up in the bar. Everyone nodded to show they understood as Exile prepared himself. With Kaleidoscope still on the hunt for him, he was the most likely to draw attention. So it was best if he went first to draw anyone on the lookout away from the doorway. Now. He quickly slipped out of the door as a group walked past. If he were to judge them on their equipment alone, then they had to be new players. As he tried to blend in, he casually observed his surroundings for anyone that may have noticed. However, it seemed like he had gotten lucky. I hope the others can do the same. Exile slowly shook his head as a frown appeared. I need to go to the temple first. Exile cursed as he remembered that everyone would need to heal up. Ugh, they'll definitely realize that. Right. He was so used to having a team that would not think twice about it, he never considered telling the guys to sort themselves out before they headed over to the bar. Well, it's unlikely anyone will start anything in the city. Exile could not shake the feelings that big things were about to happen in Pantheon Online. Which would only be natural with all of the newbies flocking to the game. Things are going to get chaotic. A sly smile appeared on his face as he took the turn towards the temple. If you are not reading this at webnovel.com or the all-free webnovel app, then sorry, the content you are reading is stolen. All rights are reserved by all-free webnovel. Don't take part in piracy. Don't earn money for thieves. I, as the author, do not benefit in any way from the actions of these thieves. To support me, the actual author, go here. https://www.webnovel.com/book/pantheon.online_19740037705104305.antihero